Hello, hello. I'm back again, and today I will be talking about the new moon in Leo, which is also going to be a solar eclipse. It is a total solar eclipse for a portion of the Earth, and it will be happening in the sign of Leo at 20 degrees of Leo. And it will be happening on August 12th, 2026 at 10:36 a.m. Pacific time. And for some of the Earth, it would be a sunset, I believe sunset eclipse in a portion of Spain. So the path of totality for this eclipse will be seen in parts of Russia, which these parts are not really inhabited. I think it's like the Siberian area, and then it will be in totality over Greenland. So it passes over the North Pole to continue having this solar eclipse totality in Greenland, and then the path of totality will end up happening in Spain. And so it will be seen pretty much mostly from Spain. And that's really cool considering that Spain seems to be where these energies are going to be landing. And we'll talk about that as we get going. So, yes, the new moon in Leo. I should bring the chart up here. Let's see. Buttons, charts. All right, we'll just get right to it. And up here we have the new moon happening at 20 degrees of Leo. And we are looking at how also having Jupiter and Mercury in Leo. And the nodes have just switched signs, and the nodes go backwards. So the south node just went from Virgo to the very end of Leo. And the north node just went from Pisces to the very end of Aquarius, which means that these eclipses are going to be in different places than where they have been in the past couple years because the nodes change signs every once in a while. Um, I can't remember exactly how long. I could look that up. Uh, but I'll get to that later. So the nodes are now in Leo and Aquarius, which means that's why we're having a total solar eclipse as seen from a small portion of the Earth. It goes over the North Pole. And the let's see, the first thing that I see in this chart very strongly is this kite formation and also a grand trine. We have a grand trine in air here, and that is with Venus and Pluto and Uranus. And it's pretty cool to have a grand trine with this Leo new moon. It feels like the seed is being planted for something, uh, some kind of like creative answer to some of our collective problems because eclipse season really comes down to the collective. It can be upsetting. It can be a moment where everything changes, or at least we call it eclipse season, and that's when things change. It's because of the eclipses. And the eclipses happen twice a year for the most part. And because the sun and the moon will cross over the nodal ecliptic, the nodes are places in the sky. They're not actual planets, they're not actual celestial beings. They are a calculated space in the sky where the ecliptic of the moon and the sun cross over each other. And that is why we're having a solar eclipse. It's because they're close enough to this ecliptic uh, point to where the sun and the moon will be crossing over each other. And so it has to be within a certain amount of degrees with this node or this node over here, the north node or the south node. So this is a south node eclipse, which means that in general, there is some kind of release, letting go of something. And that energy is being supported by this grand trine that includes Uranus, which is unexpected changes, Pluto, which is basically very soul driven for the collective. It's not super personal, this planet, Pluto. It is more about the collective and a generational placement for most of us. As an astrologer, I like to look at generations by what sign Pluto is in the zodiac. That's just how I tend to see things. And so, right now, the generation that has Pluto in Leo is facing this opposition with um, Pluto in Aquarius now. And this new moon in Leo is most likely signaling a letting go of something for a lot of people who have Pluto from 20 degrees to 29 degrees. And I would say even out more to 10 degrees even of Leo. And so, as we're going to give a big orb on both sides for this eclipse. And so that is affecting a lot of people that we call boomers. The most of the people that we call boomers, they have Pluto in Leo. And I'm not saying that this is going to be a bad event for the boomers. What I'm saying here is that with the South Node there, and along with other aspects, which I'll talk about, there probably is going to be some kind of opening of the mind because here is Mercury and something to do with the belief system, which is Jupiter there. Jupiter is our belief system. We've got religion and politics, even that is under Jupiter. And so, and I've talked about this at length in my Jupiter video. And so I know it's a long video, but it's worth taking a look at and listening to. Sometimes, you can just put me in the background and just listen to it. But that's one of the things that I talk about is Jupiter and Leo and how it relates to our belief systems and how politics is a belief system. And being in Leo, we are identified with this system. We are identified with whatever system we're identified with. And eventually, we're going to see Jupiter and the South Node come together. That's a whole different talk. But this is what this new moon solar eclipse is starting to open the door to, is Jupiter and the South Node eventually coming in contact with each other. So, one of the things I wanted to mention about this eclipse is that it it belongs to a bigger system. And if you're not familiar with it, it's called the Saros cycle. And Saros is a Greek word that means repeatable or repetitive. And so we're looking at eclipses being a small moment in a much, much, much bigger time that is playing out. So it takes hundreds of years for a Saros cycle to play out because each eclipse that happens in the Saros cycle doesn't happen for 18 years. So it'll be 18 years until we see an eclipse that will have the same type of theme as this one. The last time that we had an eclipse in this Saros cycle, which is Saros cycle number 10 south. According to Bernadette Brady's system. And this, so the last time we had an eclipse in Saros cycle number 10 south was in 2008. In 2008, people talk about that year like we remember it for something. And most of us remember it for a lot of bailouts. And so this eclipse is going to be related to those bailouts that were happening in the Obama era. And, that's why I brought up politics, is because we have a belief system and we believed that that was going to save us from certain financial problems and challenges. That we were going through a lot of financial problems and challenges. There was a housing bubble that burst. And when you look at the housing situation right now, some people have been talking about it being a housing bubble again. So it's interesting that we're going to have an eclipse that is basically carrying on and continuing the story and the theme from 2008. And the years before that, that we had the eclipses in Saros cycle number 10 south. The time before that was in 1990. The time before that was 1972. Before that was 1954. Before that was 1936. And before that, 1918. And then the one before that was 1900. So, and that's not the entire cycle. That is just a few years to bring up points of pattern and reference so that you, the watcher, can go and look at those years and see what was happening. Was there anything happening that can give you any more information? And because I didn't want to make this video super long, I didn't do a whole lot of research. I just used my memory when it came to 2008. And 1990, I I was still probably too young to really have memories about what was going on in the external world. But there are maybe those of you who are listening who remember what was going on in 1990, maybe even 1972. That is easy Google. So you can look and see if anything that you remember from 2008 comes up thematically as a pattern in those other years that I mentioned. So the Saros cycle number 10 south, it actually started March 10th, 1179. So that's how long this cycle has been going on for. And these cycles start out as partial solar eclipses at the North Pole. And so um this particular eclipse has made it to moments of totality, and these patterns, and what I'm going to talk about in just a minute here, have been showing up in more of a fuller sense. And these changes that are being brought are more obvious, just on a more obvious scale, because in the path of totality, this is where our attention should go for, the predictive nature of astrology. This is why we use eclipses for predicting. So one of the things that I definitely think is that Spain is going to be an epicenter for something that has to do with this particular eclipse. Now, the theme that plays out, that has been playing out since this cycle started, has to do with breaking out of a very negative situation where no hope can be seen, to a more positive space containing many options. And a worry may suddenly clear up, and a solution is shown by the cosmos. And I just thought that that part was very interesting, a solution being shown by the cosmos, because we are still dealing with that basket or cradle formation that people, astrologers, have been noticing is supposed to be very, very special and will change everything. It also said about this particular Saros cycle that the solution that is shown by the cosmos, it needs to be taken up without too much delay. And I think that that is probably the key and the point of caution, is that when this solution code shows up to a problem, a worry that we felt that there was no hope for, we need to, really get on it and really jump on it. And I think that living in the world today, you understand the feeling, the essence of urgency that is going on. A lot of people will agree to varying degrees that we are living in a time where things need to change, or we're looking at a cliff, and we're falling off of a cliff of humanity. And so this is one of the things that, um, you know, you can look at the predictions by Nostradamus to even see that we are living through these times right now. And so I just think that looking at the charts this year have been very interesting, so intriguing. And I get so deep into them and into the changes that are possible. I honestly have a lot of faith, a lot of hope at this point that humanity is going to be uh, coming back alive. I don't know how else to say it, because it feels like a certain kind of death is happening. And I think that maybe that we're having a South Node solar eclipse in Leo. It's going to feel like a sort of dramatic death of something. But there is light on the other side. Absolutely, there is a very um, a very good chance that humanity thrives because this precipice that we're at is not going to kill us, is going to make us stronger. And that's one of the things that Pluto tends to do. One of the funny things that you can say about Pluto is that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and I have a lot of faith. Um, we have that cradle or basket formation. It has expanded actually because of the placement of Venus. Venus has pulled that basket even more further over. And I'm not sure if we still call it a basket at this point or a cradle. I just am looking at it for what it is. It is a series of sextiles, all connected from Pluto to Neptune to Uranus to Jupiter. And then we've got Venus added here now, too. And we've got Mercury, basically, that has actually taken up Jupiter's spot because Jupiter's moved a little bit further on for this basket cradle formation. So isn't that interesting that um, Mercury is getting into the action here? And Mercury seems to be the midpoint between Uranus and Venus right now, forming a trine between Venus and Uranus. And then there's also that other mini trine with, uh, here we go, with Pluto, Uranus, and Neptune. So there are so many harmonious aspects for this solar eclipse, new moon. And it's really a beautiful, I want to say, a beautiful journey that I can see unfolding. The that so since Venus here has joined in with these sextiles into the cradle basket, expanding it. there is this very psychic connection that is coming forward for the collective, not just individual people. Of course, the collective is made up of individual people, but we're all going to be having revelations collectively. And it could be because of news, information, the things that come in that are mercurial. So it's information coming in, which is affecting our sense of our values, and it's sudden because of Uranus. And it's all harmonious. And I have said this many times, but I'll repeat it again. All of these sextiles are indicating that we need to stay open, open to receiving the gifts that these sextiles are going to be bringing to us. And I believe that they're very spiritual gifts. And the only way to receive a spiritual gift is to stay open-minded, open-hearted. And this Leo new moon is all about the heart. It really is about planting the seed in your heart. And what is that seed going to be about? I think that if you take a look at your own chart individually, if you look at the degree of 20 degrees of Leo, then about 10 degrees before and after. So all the way up to like 0 Virgo, and 10 degrees of Leo. And then also in the rest of the fixed signs. So if you have anything that is important or a planet that is at 20, like 10 to 29 degrees of um, Taurus, Aquarius, and Scorpio. These degrees are going to be challenged. And I think that especially Taurus will be challenged because Taurus is infamously more stubborn. And Chiron just entered Taurus, but has just gone retrograde again. So Chiron will be going back into Aries, but currently Chiron is retrograde in Taurus at 0 degrees. And so this is within the orb of that, um, well, I mean, I guess it's out of orb for the 10 degrees, but if we're looking at sign to sign to sign, right, then it's going to be in a square. So before I get too off track with that, I wanted to talk about what the Leo archetype is about because it gives us more information about what this eclipse is going to be bringing to the collective. And I said that Leo is really about the heart space because the Leo archetype is really about self-love, self-expression, radiance, self-confidence, the inner child. And in charts, Leo can represent like children. Fifth house is also the same archetype as Leo. So, we also have this is where your talents and your passions and your creative drive is in Leo. Um, Leo is a fire element and is all about being seen, being creative, and being a creator. and being comfortable with who you are. Being comfortable with who you are. Yeah. I mean, that is something to really think about this new moon solar eclipse. What kind of things are popping up that are basically um, a call to your passion, a call to express your joy and happiness? Because some of the things that I said, South Node, letting go, that stuff is that, you might be wanting to let go of the things that are holding you back from being happy. Things that you thought might have brought you happiness but didn't. And it's time to let those things go. It's time to let certain things expire that are no longer making you happy. And um, making you feel like hiding, uh, and not sharing your talent, feeling like you don't love yourself anymore. Any of these things, there's always a moment that we can come to witness that will give us this indication as to whether we should keep doing it or not. And I don't know how else to say that because it seems like this new moon is really an opening for happiness and joy and for um, really finding out what self-love is. Because Leo energies in a unbalanced or the shadow aspect are a little bit too invested in what other people think and whether or not other people love them. Now, there is a balance, right? Because there's a natural tendency for Leo energy to feed off of the attention and love that others will give to them. And that attention and love is supposed to help the Leo energy radiate more and inspire more, because that's really one of the key jobs of Leo energy is to inspire and to inspire to create. One creator inspires another creator. The creative energy in us gets stirred up by that Leo energy. And if somebody is embodying it in a very healthy way, we feel very inspired when we're in contact or connection or listening to, there's a lot of very, very famous Leo musicians because we're very drawn to that energy. And then they're also drawn to the energy that we give to them by loving them. But you can see how that energy might get a little out of balance when you depend on other people's love in order to love yourself, because true essence of Leo energy is to have enough self-love to basically get through it if you aren't feeling it from other people, that it doesn't really matter because it emanates from within you. And then it becomes a more of a positive spin. But some of the shadow aspects of Leo season. We'll just go through that real quick because some of these things might be showing up also. Um, so the shadow of Leo is basically being too prideful, an unearned sense of pride, because there is a pride that we can feel when we've done something or, expressed ourselves well, shared our talent with other people, and we can feel prideful of that. But when it is an unearned sense of pride and it's not really coming from the heart space, then that's what I'm talking about. And being entitled is another shadow aspect of Leo. The need to be better than, and the sense of superiority over others is a trap for Leo energy. Um, Another thing is just basically being a tyrant, because one of the things that I didn't really mention is that Leo energy is about royalty also, the king or the queen. And so that's why tyrant comes in. It's because you've got a leader, who is supposed to be enlightened, but not so enlightened. And so you have a tyrant leader instead. And, that is Leo energy still, but it's the shadow side. Um, so yeah. Mm. Another shadow aspect for Leos is stealing the spotlight, being too needy for that attention to where they can't share the spotlight with others. Because a healthy Leo energy will realize that everybody plays a part. And even if they are the leader that gets seen as in and all that, that none of it works without the rest of the people that do their part and play their part. And so stealing the spotlight from others basically and is part of like, that superiority thing that I was talking about. Then like the ego becomes a problem with Leo energy, being narcissistic and seeking love on the outside of the self, like I was saying, that can lead to actual self-loathing, self-hatred, and the feeling of not being loved enough. Because, in essence, Leo energy is supposed to have essence of self-love that doesn't need to be proved by doing anything. And doesn't need to be earned by doing anything. It just needs to exist in a harmonious, peaceful, and enlightened way. And so, yeah, the problem with the Leo energy and the not feeling loved enough is really just the Leo not tapping into their own happiness. Again, it's with that something used to make you happy, but it doesn't anymore, and you don't have to cling on to it. Like, you know, you don't have to. You can let go of it. You can liberate yourself. That's one of the reasons why we've got Pluto and Aquarius, is there is a certain sense of liberation and freedom if you don't grasp and cling too much, because there is a whole new world coming. One last funny thing about the Leo shadow is that their external image is way too important, and they'll make up stories to impress other people. And that's just being authentic, being genuine. This is all more in alignment with Leo energy. And so I just thought that was kind of funny to throw in there. And I think that the last thing that I want to talk about, because it seems so profound, with the Leo energy and something I've recently learned about the glyph for the sun. So the glyph for the sun, you can see here is a circle with a dot in the middle, and Leo is ruled by the sun. And this is why we're paying so much attention to the sun and solar energy, and it's a solar eclipse. It's very, very poetic. And with the moon right here also. So the glyph of the sun really represents the aspect of self that is in the center and is not moved by the external things. That is just being. That spot in the middle is about just being, right? Because we can just be. And that is very much Leo energy. It is very solar to understand that you can just be, you can just exist, and that you deserve or not deserve, but you are love. You are divine. You are a divine being. And so that circle around the dot is represents the becoming aspect. It is the things in the external reality that happen and move around us. And when we're focused on that external circle, the external realm, we're focused on becoming and not being so much. And I think in essence, the Leo energy is more about being, bringing yourself back into the center, being the center, basically, the center of attention, right? But the center of your own attention. I think that is one of the things that's missed about when we talk about the center of attention and seeking attention, is that if and when you can bring your attention back into your own center, you don't need attention from the external. You are able to emanate from within. And of course, there's going to be things happening around you. The becoming phase, the act of becoming is always going to be happening around you because that's just how it is. It's just the concept of where our attention is going. I thought this is really cool to bring up to close this out because this seed of the new moon in Leo, the the solar eclipse, is really about bringing your attention back into yourself, back into your heart space, and feeling like you are a divine being that is allowed to just exist. One of the questions that the Leo archetype asks is, how can I show up as a radiant divine being and inspire others? And that's a lot of coming in back into your heart space and making decisions from that heart space and um, not being too rattled by the outside, not getting too off center, off balance by focusing too much on the outside. And so it's a perfect moment, I think, to talk about this with the sun and the moon, both in Leo, because it is a coming home to the sun and to the moon with regards to the concept of just being, being a divine being. So I think that that is it for this time. I didn't want to take up too much time this time because, yeah. So I hope that you were able to get something out of this. I think that it's going to be a very positive turn for the collective. And individually, you are going to be asked to bring your attention back into yourself, because that's where we're going to inspire each other. And this is truly where the change is coming from, is from inside the heart space here, individually. So I hope that everybody has a beautiful, wonderful eclipse, new moon in Leo. And I will be back for another lunation adventure when we're having the lunar eclipse next time. Okay. All right. Bye next time. Bye.